Okay, let's take a look at finding the percent of a number. Okay, when we look to find a percent of a number, we can use proportions to find that percent of a number, of a given number. We're going to use a formula that I like to say as is over of equals percent over 100. This formula makes everything really easy. It sets it up as a proportion, and then you can write your equation and go from there. You can also say the part over the whole equals percent over 100. So you're, first of all, go ahead and set your proportion up with just your blank lines. 100 always goes on the bottom. Okay, here we have 67%, so that's going over our 100. It always goes in that spot. Of 90 goes where the of goes. And we're looking for this number. Okay, so now we're going to use our cross products to write our equation. 90 times 67 equals 100 n. Okay, 90 times 67 is a little bit hard to do in our head, so we can multiply it right here. 67 times 90. Go ahead and cross that 0 out, bring it down as a placeholder, and multiply by your 9. 9 times 7 is 63. Carry your 6. 9 times 6 is 54, plus 6 is 60. So in this case, we've got 6,030 equals 100 n. Now we're going to divide both sides by 100 because we're going to use those inverse operations to solve this equation, and we were multiplying inverse as division. So we're going to divide by 100. And boys and girls, remember when we divide by 100, it just takes the decimal and moves it 2 places to the left. And in our number 6,030, we don't see a decimal, so let's say it's hiding behind it, pull it out of its hiding place. When we divide by 100, 1, 2. So our answer is 60, and 3/10 equals n. So 67% of 90 is 60 and 3/10. Okay? So let's look at B. We've got the same thing. We're going to go ahead and set up our proportion. Our 100 always goes over here. 145% goes over the 100. Of 210 goes here where your of is. Okay? And we're looking for this number right here. So we're going to multiply right here. 210 times 145 equals 100 n. Okay, so let's multiply our 145 times 210. Go ahead, cross out your 0, put a placeholder, 1 times 5, 1 times 4, and 1 times 1. Okay, cross that out. We need 2 0 placeholders. 2 times 5 is 10. Carry your 1. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9, and 2 times 1 is 2. And we're going to add 0, 5, 4, 9 plus 1 is 10. Add it here. We've got 3. So we've got 30,450 equals 100 n. Again, we're going to use those inverse operations. So we're going to divide by 100. Here and divide by 100 here. 100 divided by 100 equals 1, and 1 times n is n. So we're going to take our 30,450, pull that decimal out of the hiding place, and bump it back 2 places because we're dividing by 100. That gives us 304 and 5/10. Now let's think about it for a second. Does that make sense? Because that's a big number. Does that make sense? We're looking for 145% of 210. 145% is more than the whole thing. That's almost 1.5 times 210. Does 304 and 5/10 make sense? Yes, it does. Look back at this one. 67% of 90 67% is less than the whole, so it's going to be less than that 90. And we've got 60 and 3/10 equals n. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. Okay. Now we can also, there's another way you can write the percent as a decimal and then multiply by the number here. So we've got 8%. So let's write that as a decimal. 8%, we can divide it by 100, which means we'll pull that decimal out, move it 2 places to the left, and now our decimal is 8/100. Okay, so we can multiply 50 times 8/100. 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 5 is 40. Okay, no places behind the decimal here, 2 here, and we have 2 in our answer. So our answer there is 4 is 8% of 50. Does that make sense? Yes, because 8% is just a little bit. So, and that's just a little bit of 50, so that's about right. And 8% is pretty close to 10%, and we know 10% would be 5. So there it is. Okay, so let's look at this one. We've got 0.5%. Okay, so we're going to divide by 100, which means we're going to move it 2 places to the left. So our decimal is 0.05. And let's multiply that 5/100 now times our 36. 5 times 6 is 30. Carry my 3. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 3 is 18. No places behind the decimal here. 2 here. So we need 2 in our answer. 1, 2. So we have 1 8/10 is 5% of 36. Okay? Does that make sense? That's a small number, but look, we're only looking for 0.5%. So yes, that makes sense.